Support for podcasts comes from Milwaukee School of Engineering Center for Professional Education, offering courses in AI machine learning, project management, and more. Program information at msoe.edu/CPE.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Xcaret Nunez. Today, we'll help you understand the basics of data centers and tell you about a new resource from WUWM that can help.
Well, data centers are the foundation of the internet, so they are essential infrastructure like railroads or power plants or highways. And they are driving a lot of the investment in tech and energy right now.
Then, we'll learn about the local need for blood donations following a cold snap. Plus, we'll learn about the legends surrounding Friday the 13th and its ominous place in our culture.
Stephen King claims to have this fear of the number 13. And if noted horror master, who can create some of the worst things that we can imagine, is afraid of this number, perhaps there's credence.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Xcaret Nunez. Thanks for joining us. Data centers serve as the foundation of the internet, with tech companies like Microsoft investing billions of dollars in artificial intelligence. Even larger data centers are being proposed and built around the world. In Wisconsin, projects like the Vantage Data Center in Port Washington have stirred controversy. And in Mount Pleasant, Microsoft is building what it calls the most advanced data center in the world. With these large-scale projects come questions about how it'll impact Wisconsin communities. So, to help answer those questions, WUWM has a new resource on our website for you to better understand what's happening with data centers. WUWM reporter Eddie Morales sat down with Lake Effect's Joy Powers to talk about our new data centers FAQ.
So let's start with probably the main question here. What are data centers?
Yeah, data centers, they really support everything that we do on the internet, things that we use our computer for, things that we do on our phone. I spoke with 3 experts to learn more about data centers. One of them is Kyle Cranmer. He is the director of the Data Science Institute at UW-Madison, and he described some of the reasons data centers exist.
They power essentially almost all internet and digital services that you ever might encounter. So, for instance, if you hear that something is in the cloud, actually it's very much on the ground and in one of these data centers. So that includes search engines like Google, your email, messaging.
So there are over 4,000 data centers in operation in the U.S. and nearly 3,000 more that have been announced or are under construction. And so they're growing at a really fast rate. And a major reason for that is advancements in cloud computing and AI, and kind of a race between tech companies in different nations to become a leader in that. To describe the way that data centers look physically, they're kind of nondescript, often large. They really have a big presence in rural areas. And specifically when it comes to the race in competing for AI advancements, the types of data centers that are needed for that are hyperscale data centers. And so those are the ones that are especially large, that house thousands of industrial scale computer servers to support that cloud and AI infrastructure. And in large part, those are controversial because they require more land and more resources to function.
Sure. Now, it seems like we have seen data centers all over the news lately. Why is that? Why are we seeing them so much?
There's an investment of billions of dollars from tech companies like Microsoft, Meta, Google, to bring these to communities that have the resources, that have the tax incentives like Wisconsin does. And so because those are appearing, those proposals, those are popping up in the news because of the concerns that they raise and some of the controversial aspects that surround it. So, for example, residents are voicing concerns at municipal meetings. Environmental groups like Clean Wisconsin are conducting studies on things like electricity and water usage. Microsoft even canceled plans for its Caledonia data center that it proposed after so many critics showed up and voiced their concerns about it. Kyle Cranmer spoke to that in our chat, and I think that really highlights some of the problems that we're seeing and why it's appearing in the news so much.
I think data centers are at the intersection of many issues that have people's attention and also includes a lot of themes that people are simultaneously excited and worried about.
Right now, Microsoft's data center in Mount Pleasant is under construction, and the company also recently announced that it would expand that project with an additional 15 data centers. So there's really not going to be any time soon where this is in the news less. It's going to be an ongoing and developing thing.
That sounds like a huge number of buildings. What is the rationale behind building so many new data centers?
Yeah, tech companies say that hyperscale data centers provide the infrastructure that they need to improve AI performance and growth. Some proponents link that growth of AI and data centers to the nation's future. Some local lawmakers in Wisconsin are eager for that development in their communities. They say that data centers can generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Another expert that I spoke to, Costa Samaras, is the director of the Scott Institute for Energy Innovation at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. He also led clean energy innovation for the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy under the Biden administration. And he's not really speaking here as a supporter or a critic of data centers, but I think this quote from our conversation really puts into perspective why there's this data center boom right now.
Well, data centers are the foundation of the internet. So they are essential infrastructure like railroads or power plants or highways. And they are driving a lot of the investment in tech and energy right now. And they can help improve U.S. innovation for artificial intelligence.
Advocates of job creation, they're arguing that data centers will provide important job opportunities and job training. And that's a big part of OpenAI and Oracle's Vantage data center in Port Washington. It's called the Lighthouse Data Centers Project. And they're saying that it's going to create more than 4,000 skilled construction jobs, union jobs, and then there will also be more than 1,000 long-term jobs and then thousands of more indirect jobs. And that's according to a release from the companies.
And yet we're seeing so many communities come out against these data centers. Why are there so many Wisconsin communities that oppose data center developments?
Ultimately, critics say that development is moving too quickly and without enough oversight or public involvement. There's been concern about NDAs or non-disclosure agreements between tech companies and communities. That's actually an issue that one expert I spoke with, Amy Barrio, she mentioned that to me. She's the communications director at Clean Wisconsin, and she says those deals have caused a lack of transparency.
It's hard to overstate the concern that's out there on so many levels. Certainly having things rush through behind closed doors only makes that worse.
So there's also concern about the potential impact on climate goals, homeowners and renters' energy rates, the ways that the large presence of data centers can change the rural character of these communities. And according to a University of Michigan study, the rapidly growing energy demands of data centers have even forced states to delay the retirement of coal and gas plants and even consider building new fossil fuel facilities. So really, there's this concern about a regression from some of the work in recent decades that's gone into clean energy. Critics of the data center boom, they also worry about how residential power rates could be affected. The Lighthouse project in Port Washington, that calls for new high-power transmission lines to connect the data center complex to the power supply. Those high-power transmission lines could cover 100 miles and span even 6 counties. So it's a huge project, and it's a projected cost of up to $1.6 billion.
Right now, it feels like Wisconsin is a hotbed for data centers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think expert opinions vary on this. Right now, Microsoft is touting that its Mount Pleasant data center will harbor the most powerful supercomputer in the world. Wisconsin is a desirable place for tech companies, and mainly that's because of the state's data centers sales and use tax exemption and water access for cooling servers. According to the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, these projects can bring programs to communities to bolster the workforce and offer high working wages and bring significant capital investment to communities. So Wisconsin communities are in some ways welcoming these data centers, and because of the resources we have, this is also a desirable place for them. And so those two things combining is why we're seeing Wisconsin sort of becoming what seems like a hotbed and a desirable destination for these data center proposals. Wisconsin actually had 47 data centers in operation as of October last year. And in comparison, Illinois had 232. And right now, actually leading the U.S. is Virginia with 663 data centers. So when you talk about Wisconsin being a hotbed, there are other states that are ahead, but a huge company like Microsoft saying that they're bringing the world's most powerful supercomputer here brings a lot of attention to our state. From my conversation with Amy Barrio, she shared her opinion on the question that you just asked, Joy.
It feels like Wisconsin is a hotbed for data centers, but it almost seems like every state is a hotbed for data centers. Like, certainly this is not a thing that's unique to Wisconsin. But I will say that since Wisconsin passed tax incentives for tech companies, that's when you started to see data centers really start coming in and getting proposed.
That tax incentive that Barrio cited, that's just one part of the evolving legislation and ongoing changes that are happening with different proposals from lawmakers as this situation evolves and people are trying to get ahead of how quickly these tech companies are attempting to build and propose these projects in Wisconsin.
Well, and that really gets to this next question and one of the issues that you've mentioned here. People are concerned about oversight. They feel like there is very little happening. Who are the people, the organizations in Wisconsin that are overseeing or influencing data center development?
Yeah, there are elected officials, there's businesses, community-led groups that are all playing a role in approving and regulating, overseeing data center development. And there are also some that are speaking out against data centers. And we heard a little bit about Clean Wisconsin's role in doing some of these studies and research into what the data centers are claiming that the energy use is, and then what those implications are for the communities. In my conversation with Costas Samaras, he was able to put into perspective what implications these projects have in other states.
There have been challenges noted around the country, including in Tennessee, where a data center was burning fossil fuels on site to provide power and generating new emissions in communities. There have been challenges with electricity price spikes and grid capacity issues in different parts of the country. There are several states where data centers now consume more than 10% of the state's electricity. In Virginia, data centers consume upwards of 25 to 40% of the state's electricity.
So in Virginia, data centers consume upwards of 25 to 40% of the state's electricity. And following the rising number of data center proposals in 2025 and the rising outcry from critics, Wisconsin legislators have released several proposals. So there's a Republican proposed bill that would require the Public Service Commission to ensure that no other customers are responsible for the cost of constructing or extending electric infrastructure that primarily serves a data center. That measure, it also would require that water used to cool equipment be contained in a closed-loop system. The closed-loop system, it's this technology that data centers, especially the one in Mountain Pleasant for Microsoft, they're really emphasizing that this is going to limit the amount of water usage, and it's going to be a fixed volume of water that is recycled, only used for cooling on some of the hottest days. Other days, cooler days, they will use air with large fans to cool those servers to make sure that they don't overheat. So the renewable energy facilities that primarily serve the data centers, they would be required to be located under this proposed bill at the site of the data center. And really, Republicans backing the bill say that that's meant to minimize the strain on the statewide grid and to lower costs. In December last year, Democrats in the Senate introduced a bill that would require large-scale data centers to derive at least 70% of their annual electric energy from renewable sources. And that's in order to qualify for exemptions from sales and use taxes. So in addition to that, in order to receive tax credits, large-scale data centers would have to pay laborers and mechanics who construct or refurbish the facilities the prevailing wage or the wage under the collective bargaining agreement, so whichever is higher. These things are being put in place and proposed to just help hold these tech companies accountable so that they're not coming to the community making these promises, and then once things are done, it's not what these communities expected. You also have these community-led groups and these organizations that are Also worried about the integrity of the community's rural character and energy use.
I think when we look at really anything in the tech sphere, there's always another potential problem, the long-term viability. It feels like tech moves at a pace, especially now, that it's hard to imagine that something you're building today will even be useful in 5 years. Are there concerns about these centers becoming obsolete in the, relatively near future?
Yeah, there are some concerns about that, and opinions vary on it as well. Hyperscale data centers, they power artificial intelligence, right? So some critics are concerned about how quickly tech companies are building these projects and whether this growing AI bubble will pop. Amy Barrio, she shared her opinion about what some of those concerns are about this rapidly growing technology and some of the implications of if that just goes away.
We all know technology changes quickly and things become obsolete really fast. And so what happens when these hyperscale data centers aren't needed anymore, when they're obsolete? Because these are very specialized buildings.
When I spoke to Kyle Cranmer, he said that data centers likely won't become obsolete, but that they could evolve.
If the data centers only served AI and you're worried about an AI bubble, then that I think the worry that the data centers might become obsolete is much higher. But the data centers are very multi-purpose, and they're serving up all sorts of aspects of our digital lives.
Ultimately, there are a lot of advancements happening right now. There are a lot of changes and updates in proposed bills, proposed developments, studies on energy consumptions. These things are constantly changing. And so with our FAQ on our website, that's something that we'll be updating and also just individually reporting on some of these developments as they happen, especially from our environmental reporter, Susan Bentz. And we also want to know what questions listeners have, and those questions could be submitted on this FAQ page on our website.
Perfect. All right, well, a lot to look forward to. Eddie, thank you so much for being here on Lake Effect and sharing your work.
Thank you.
That was WUWM news reporter Eddie Morales speaking with Lake Effect's Joy Powers about our new data center FAQ resource. You can find it at wuwm.com. The cold snap we experienced in January impacted more than our heating bills. Versity's blood supply ran low due to canceled blood drives and appointments. Today, the supply is rebounding as regularly scheduled blood drives resume, but donations can help replenish what was lost last month. Gretchen Jameson is the Chief Marketing Officer at Versity. She joins Lake Effect's Sam Woods to share more about the shortage and seasonal changes to blood supply.
Why is there a blood shortage right now?
It's really a fascinating thing when we think about blood shortage, in that of the eligible population in the United States, adult population eligible to donate, only 3 to sometimes 5% actually do donate. So in some respects, we're always in this cycle of just needing more blood on the shelves, if you will, at all of our hospitals across the country. Certain times of the year, that's a little bit more acute than others. And that's in particular true in the winter months when it's cold and it's hard, especially for some of those older donors who are so dependable and so loyal to this mission to get out. And also in the summer months when all of those high school blood drives are not happening. So there's always this seasonality to the more acute and dire need for blood. But I have to say, in many ways, we always need it because there's such a low percentage of the population giving regularly.
It sounds like this is cyclical and almost predictable, where the weather gets very cold in the winter, or in the summer you don't have those student blood drives, that you're expecting a shortage during those times usually?
We do, and we plan for that in terms of our kind of our allocation plan and how we serve our hospital partners. It's been really fascinating, and I'd love to talk about this a little bit for Versity here in Wisconsin, but also we work across the 5 Great Lakes states. We had a very successful January, and I say that carefully because I certainly don't want folks to think, well, heck, we don't need to go give. But across the Great Lakes states, cumulatively in January, we had 29 sub-zero days, pretty much the whole month of January. That meant canceled drives. Here in Milwaukee, we had one Friday where every mobile drive was canceled because of the deep freeze. And yet, here's what's really awesome. Our donors showed up. They heard the call, they listened, they responded. Shows like this, programs like this, outreach got, especially in Milwaukee, our donors were present. And that is a true testament to the community. So we plan for it to be tight. We really do. And then 29 days below zero across our footprint, that's rough. But it's that consistent drumbeat of, hey, we really need you, and people choosing to listen that honestly made a massive impact this January.
Well, shout out Milwaukee. Love to hear that.
I know, right? I mean, like, we're not afraid of the cold.
Right. Well, speaking of cold, and you mentioned earlier, the phrase of keeping blood on the shelves, so to speak. I'm curious because, these stockpile of blood seems to be cyclical, and there's, during the winter and summer months, there can be expected shortages. This may be a silly question for someone like you who's in this industry, but why can't we freeze or store blood for these, like stockpile blood for these times?
Stockpile it. I've been in my role for just about 2 years, and I asked very similar questions, right? Like, isn't there a way? And, we would need to get our chief medical officer and our transfusion medicine doctors on this call to really explain it to us. But unfortunately, like, no, right? Like, it's got a very limited shelf life. And even that, the use is so continuous. I mean, that's the thing. Like, when we think about, especially what we call like level 1 trauma centers, like a freighter or something, right? The need that they have for blood, not just for regular routine surgeries, cancer patients that need transfusions, things that are very, kind of predictable and planned. You think of the mass trauma events. And then again, by the way, apply that to the weather patterns of the year, right? Where we have these circumstances that demand sometimes hundreds of units to save a life, right? That throws a wrench in everything. So it's quite fascinating actually to learn how the inventory kind of works and how this system works across the country. Versity participates in something called the Blood Centers of America, BCA. We're a part of a network where if there's shortages in other parts of the country, the BCA affiliates kick in and help. So it really is a very fascinating thing across the country, not just here in Milwaukee or here in Wisconsin, how this inventory has to work to keep Americans healthy when we need it, right? And that's pretty impressive when you think about it.
So sitting here in early mid-February, are there particular types of blood that are needed right now, or is it just, if you got blood, we'll take it?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to say if you've got blood, we would love for you to be a donor. Really, if you are a type O blood type, be you O positive or O negative, especially if you are O negative, because you are the universal blood type, right? You're the unicorn of blood types. That need is always very acute because in surgery, in trauma, that group O, we call it, blood is used most regularly on EMS units, right? That's the type of blood they're carrying. So if you're a type O and you haven't given in a while, we would love to see you. And we would love to see you become kind of a regular donor. I mean, you can give 8 times a year. Our goal is to get our group O's consistently donating 4 times a year. Just booking that into their habit. I'm a O positive. You get my little message within like 48 hours of your blood's on the way to Children's Hospital, and it's just this sense of you donate it, it's being used. And that's pretty compelling.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm got a new interest in donating blood, but I'm not sure if I'm eligible, how do I find out about eligibility and if I'm a right fit for this?
Absolutely. You know, folks have different medical conditions and their own personal kind of health history. So the best thing to do is to visit versity.org and check out. We have a whole section of the website that will help a person understand maybe what some of the limitations for them might be. I'm very open about this. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. And so there's been, pockets of my life when I've not been eligible to donate because of my, cancer treatments and oncology and things of that nature. So all of us have different stories. So the best thing to do is visit versity.org, take a read. But if you read that and you're still not sure, there's very easy ways to chat with our donor care team off the website, and they can answer any questions that a prospective donor might have about their eligibility.
Again, for those that are new to this, but want to donate blood, what should they expect from an appointment?
I love that. So if you're going to visit one of our fixed donor centers, which I highly recommend, I mean, it's great to do a mobile drive, those pop up at schools and community organizations, and certainly encourage that. If you're a first-time donor, visiting a donor center, and we have multiple across the state, you can take a look at the website. It's a great, very comfortable experience, right? You're going to come into this really lovely center. You're going to be greeted by super friendly volunteers. There's going to be a very short intake interview, maybe 10 minutes. They're going to prick your finger, which is the part I actually like the least, which is weird. It doesn't hurt. I think it's just more the here we go. They're going to check to make sure that your iron levels are healthy, that you're in a good place to donate that day. The best way to make sure that happens is be sure to hydrate before you come in. Eat a good breakfast and make sure that you're, kind of nutritionally ready to donate blood. After you do that short intake, if everything looks good, it's like a little mini health check. You get your blood pressure, you'll go over to one of the chairs, and our phlebotomists are just incredible. We like to say hope flows through them, right to our patients. And so our donors. And so they will just get you set up. Usually 10 to 20 minutes, depending. Some people like to race. My husband gives blood very rapidly, and he somehow thinks that makes him better than me. I'm rather slow about how I give. Again, everyone is different. After you finish, you'll wander over to what we call the canteen and help yourself to delicious snacks. Everyone has their favorites. Fresh baked cookies are in our centers as well. And about 45 minutes, you're back about your day. And for many people, people, do I feel tired afterwards? Again, everyone is different. But most folks, they go about their day and they're back at it.
Well, fresh baked cookies seems like a pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good incentive there. Well, I'll end with sharing a little bit of vulnerability from myself. So I've given blood before, but got to do a little bit of mental prep beforehand, and just kind of the idea of needles is, it's a bit of a mental hurdle for me. So can you help make the case to folks like me who are a little kind of like, I don't know about needles, make the case to someone who's maybe a little scared going into this?
Yeah. Isn't that normal? I think it really is. Again, I mentioned my own health history. I've had a lot of needles and I'm not a fan, right? And I don't know that I've met many donors in our beautiful donor set, or they're like, yay, this is the best part of giving blood. So that's, first of all, just know you're not alone, right? That is completely normal. And our phlebotomists, those are the folks who draw the blood, are really well trained. So, and I've had multiple, I've not had the same phlebotomist all the times I've given with Versity, but I've had the same great experience. So they're really well trained to make it very pain-free. Some people like to watch, I do not. And they'll talk you through it. Back when I was a teenager, and I'm older now, you could see the blood that you were giving. It was a little bit odd. Now it's actually out of your line of sight. And frankly, that actually really helps. And so, there are things that you can do to just sort of talk with your phlebotomist. And especially if you're chit-chatting with them, I'm going to tell you, you really almost don't notice that you're off and running. And once it starts, then it's just super easy from there.
Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for joining me on Lake Effect.
It's great to be with you.
Gretchen Jameson is the Chief Marketing Officer at Versity. She spoke with Lake Effect's Sam Woods. Versity Blood Center is a financial contributor to WUWM. Do you need some flexibility for when you listen to Lake Effect? Well, you can listen to us on demand. Find it as a podcast wherever you like to listen, download, and enjoy on the go. In about 15 minutes, we'll learn about the history and lore surrounding Friday the 13th. But first, a local romance bookstore owner shares her recommendations ahead of Valentine's Day. That's coming up on Lake Effect on WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Excaret Nunez. Do you need something to get you in the spirit of Valentine's Day? Well, try a date with a good book. Whatever your relationship status might be, Natasha Meyer has got some romantic reads to share. Meyer is the owner of The Well-Read Damsel, a romance bookstore in Wauwatosa. She joins me to talk about the books you can fall in love with this Valentine's Day. Before we dive into your list of recs, I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about the story behind Well-Read Damsel. You didn't start out as a brick and mortar, right?
Correct. So we started as a pop-up bookstore in 2024. I really wanted to open a romance bookstore, but the thought of jumping into a brick and mortar really freaked me out. It's a big endeavor, and the pop-up was my way of it's way more accessible. I'll see if I even like it. At this point, I had never worked in a bookstore. I had never worked in retail. I just love reading. And I was like, I think I could make it happen. And I kept waiting for someone to open a romance bookstore here, and it never did. And I was like, I think I'm crazy enough to be the one to do it. So we started in 2024. Our first event, we had 300, 400 people show up.
Wow.
And my pop-up was literally just me. I had a table and a bookshelf in Ray's Bar in Tosa. And we had a line for the entire 3-hour event, and the madness has kind of just kept going from there.
I love to hear that. And since we're talking about book recommendations today, I was wondering, when you're making a book recommendation to someone, how do you think about what makes a good romance book?
A lot of people ask us what qualifies as a romance book too. How do we decide what we're going to stock in our store, being so genre specific? And typically we like to say a romance book has a happily ever after or a happily for now. So maybe it's not the full bow is tied, but we're kind of ending on a happy note. But for me, a romance book, it's an escape. I think it's something where it is just a way to get away from everyday life and kind of go into someone else's life and ignore the craziness of the world around you. And some people find that the happily ever after is too predictable, but I think a lot of people find comfort in that. A lot of people in our store hate a third act breakup, when meaning towards the end of the story they break up and then get back together. But even when that does happen, you know they're going to get back together. So there's a little bit of calm and there's some excitement, but it's going to work out.
Yeah, it's going to be okay.
Yes.
Almost promised.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Natasha, you've shared your list of book recommendations with me. Let's start by talking about How to Get a Life in 10 Dates by Olivia Dade. Who might this be a good book for?
I think this is a good book for someone who's going on a first date. So in the book, she's kind of fed up with her dating life, and she tells all of her friends and family they each get to set her up on one date. So she goes on a first date with a bunch of different people. And for her, she kind of finds out that she's starting to have fun with dating. I think it was a big, for a lot of people, dating is hard as a single girl in Milwaukee. Dating is rough. And she's going on all these dates and she's finding out, she can have fun. And she's learning a little bit about herself. She's feeling more confident in herself. But then in this book, she also maybe has a best friend who wants to be one of those dates.
Ooh. Okay, Well, I feel what a power move for her to be family, set me up.
Yes, because I feel so many people are oh, why are you still single? A lot of friends and family get that when you're a single person. And in this, she's okay, fine. Then you find somebody for me.
Oh my
And that's kind of
gosh.
how the premise of the book starts.
Okay, love this. And your next pick might be for someone who's truly just looking for a fling, nothing serious, and that's titled The Next Best Fling by Gabriela Gamis.
Yeah, so for that one, so she is in love with the main guy's brother, and he is in love with his brother's fiance. And so it starts by this couple getting engaged, and the other two people in their life are very unhappy about it. And through like a little bit of hijinks, they end up fake dating. Fake dating is one of my favorite things because it's like the rest of the world thinks they're dating. They're like, no, this is just pretend. But then over time, they may or may not get together. But in this one, it's just like fun. It's flirty. It's spicy. Kind of just a good way to get lost in a story. Like all romance books, we get a happily ever after. But I think it's like a fun way to get there, even if you are just looking for a fling.
Well, you have another book that takes a closer look at long-term relationships, and that's Ever After Always by Chloe Leese. Can you tell me about this book?
I think this one is a great book for somebody who's maybe been with their partner for a while. And this book it's kind of like a relationship in crisis. They've been married a long time. They've kind of thought they'd always be together, but like something is just not clicking right now. But they're not broken up when it starts. We do call it like a second chance romance. So they've been together or they've broken up and they're going to have like kind of a rekindling moment. But basically they get tossed onto a family vacation. The whole series itself is different brothers and sisters in this family. And so they're kind of on this family vacation, stuck with, I think, lots of couples. And they've kind of have to work through, do they want to be together? And if so, like, how do they turn things around?
This one kind of caught my eye because it seems like there's a lot of relatable moments in it.
Yeah, almost every single one of them. There's a lot of disability representation in a lot of her books. So I feel like it's a good romance story, but there's a lot of heart in it, which I really love.
Well, this next one that we're going to talk about, some people might be going through this on Valentine's Day of an it's complicated or forbidden love type of situation.
Oh, yeah.
So it's super fitting you picked this book, and it's something that everyone's talking about right now, and it's Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed.
Yeah, Heated Rivalry is the book of the moment right now. In the romance world, we have been fans of this series for so long, so it's amazing that it's finally getting like the hype it deserves, but it is the definition of like an it's complicated relationship. It's two men in a professional hockey league who are rivals, like on opposing teams, and from very early on in their hockey careers, they start hooking up, and they're both like closeted and gay. So it started as a series. So it's called the Game Changer series by Rachel Reed. Book 2 is actually Heated Rivalry, what they base the show off of, but it is a 6-book series. The show takes the couple Ilya and Shane from book 2, but you also see Kip and Scott from book 1, Game Changers. That's also in a few episodes of it too. So it's mostly book 2, but the series as a whole is interconnected. And yeah, it's just good. It's spicy, it's fun, but there's a lot of heart in it, and there's just like a lot of like very sweet moments, and I think they capture it well on the show. So if you like the show, definitely give the book a try.
Well, I'm gonna have to check that one out.
Yes, definitely.
I'm Lake Effect's Excret Nunez, speaking with Natasha Myers about her book suggestions that people should make a date with this Valentine's Day. Natasha, what if there's someone tuning in who's going through a breakup right now? Do you have a pick that has people thinking outside of love, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I think a great book for that would be The Awakening of Gods by Morgan Caitlish. She's actually an author out of Madison, and this was her debut book. It's a fantasy series. And the reason why I think it'd be great for somebody going through a breakup is you can get lost in a story that sole focus isn't just falling in love. I think if you're going through a breakup, maybe reading about someone else's love story could be a little rough, depending on how the breakup ended. But it's a fantasy series, and not to give too much away, but it's set in a very unique world where the main character, she is the second daughter to a king and a queen. In this world, usually the first prince or princess goes on this big trial. There's magic, there's gods. Very quickly you find out that the gods have chosen her instead of her older sister who's been training her whole life. So she's got to quickly train for these trials. She goes on this big adventure. It's part of a 3-book series. The first 2 books are out. It's actually our top-selling book of our bookstore for all of 2025. If you're looking for an escape, that's a good place to start.
Okay, you're getting me hooked on all of these. So what if you find yourself in the friend zone for Valentine's Day, what's a book you suggest people check out?
So, Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage, I will say some of my booksellers were arguing with me a little bit. It's not total friend zone, but it is a chance for me to talk about Lila Sage, who I love so much. But in this book, it is a couple who were like high school sweethearts and broke up and were apart for a long time. And they kind of come back into each other's life, and it starts as a friendship. And then they have to kind of figure out, like, is what we're feeling friendship? Is it stuff from our past? Or can this be something new? It's book 4 in the Rebel Blue Ranch series. It's fun. It's cowboys. And in this one, it's kind of being in that friend zone for a little bit.
So I love this next pick of yours because it's all about self-love. It's Felix Ever After by Kaysen Callender. Tell me why this is one on your list of books to date.
Yeah, so this one, the main character is trans. It's a young adult novel. They find themselves getting kind of anonymous, like, trans hate messages, and they kind of embark on this endeavor to figure out who it is and kind of plot this plan for revenge. But along the way, it really is a journey of, like, questioning who you are and, like, redefining what's important to you. There's some love interests along the way, too, but I think the biggest love story in the book is his relationship with himself. So I think it's great if you're not so much looking for dating someone else and kind of want to focus on, like, a self-reflective journey. I think it's a good place to start.
Definitely. The year of self-discovery, honestly.
Exactly.
So what if Valentine's Day is something you celebrate with your kids? I know you recently came out with children's books at the bookstore.
Yeah, so we did a big renovation at the beginning of January, and we're able to put in both books. We've always carried young adult, so that's typically like 12 to 18, but now we carry middle grade, which is like 8 to 12, and then like children's books. So for YA, a great book for a Valentine would be Call Forth a Fox by Markel Graybo. She's an author out of Illinois. It's a really fun, like, sapphic retelling of Snow White and I want to say Red Rose. It's a cozy fantasy, and it feels like you're just, like, stepping into this, like, wintry magical fairy tale. So I think that'd be a great pick for somebody like 12 and up. And then for middle grade, there's a book called Starfish by Lisa Phipps. And even just looking at the cover, I could cry. It's like the sweetest book on earth. And it's a book about a young girl who is facing a lot of, like, body issues. It's coming from people at school. It's coming from her mom. And it's her way of working through it and loving herself at, like, the age of, like, 8. So it is kind of like a heavy topic, but I think it is really important because a lot of kids face issues like that. So knowing you're not alone, and also, like, just going on this sweet, like, fun journey. And then for kids, there is a book called States of Love, Wisconsin, written by Tatum Evans. And this is actually a book made from a publisher out of Wauwatosa. So that's how we got originally connected to it. And it's just a really sweet picture book of all of the things that make Wisconsin, like, special and fun. And it's been one of our bestsellers because it's a good gift for older kids or a baby on the way, that sort of thing. Like, any kid that loves Wisconsin, it's kind of a fun little ode to our state.
Yeah, I mean, with States of Love, Wisconsin, I absolutely just, like, love the cover of the book, and it just seems so sweet that I would even love to flip through it myself.
Oh, yeah, it's cute. Like, there's, like, hodags from up north and, like, our sports teams, and the illustrations are beautiful. And it's fun because there are lots of Wisconsin-themed books, but it's fun working with a publisher that literally is just a few blocks away from us.
Absolutely. Well, Natasha, I love all of your recommendations.
Thank you.
Feel like it could reach any reader for Valentine's Day or any day. We went from books that could give you butterflies to really spicy feelings.
Yeah, and everything in between. Yeah.
Well, Natasha, thank you so much for speaking with me today. This was really fun.
This was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Natasha Meyer is the owner of the Well-Read Damsel in Wauwatosa. Still ahead, we'll learn why so many people think Friday the 13th is unlucky. That's next on Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Xcaret Nunez. Today isn't just Galentine's Day. It's also an ominous day for many, Friday the 13th. It's a day of superstitions about bad luck. But what makes Friday the 13th such a foreboding date? Anna Lardnoy is an expert in all things ghostly, and she joins Lake Effect's Joy Powers to talk about the legend of Friday the 13th.
So what is the history behind specifically the number 13? Because it seems like that's where a lot of this starts.
Well, there is a word for the fear of the number 13. It's triskaidekaphobia. And studies say 10% of Americans are fearful of the number 13. And 8% are fearful of Friday the 13th, which we are having this week. So this goes back to, many people say, before biblical times. We see the Code of Hammurabi. It is an ancient list of laws from 1754 BC. And in that list of 282 laws of the land, they've omitted the number 13. So this fear of that number goes back all that way. And some people think it could be even biblically related. If we look at the Last Supper, we see that there were 13 guests, and that 13th guest, Judas, was the person who led to that being the Last Supper. And that's not the only story that has 13 guests. We have a piece of Norse mythology where Odin is having a dinner party, and it is disrupted by his 13th guest, Loki. So that appears in a lot of different cultures. 13 seems to be woven through many of our Western traditions as just being unlucky.
It seems like, as I was looking into this, part of it appears to be that 12 is a very complete number. There are a number of things that have 12, like the 12 tribes of Israel, for example. But a lot of cultures use 12 as this kind of complete whole number. And then 13 ends up being kind of a bad omen of sorts. When we come to Friday especially, is that a biblical link? Is that why Friday is no good?
We do have some biblical connections for Friday being no good. We have the Good Friday is celebrating the death, actually the resurrection, but crucifixion, right. And then we have Adam and Eve being ejected from the Garden of Eden on Friday. As a person who writes a lot about shipwrecks, I notice that mariners also have a deep fear of Fridays and, in fact, often will avoid scheduling journeys that begin on Fridays. It's supposed to be a bad omen for the entire journey. So they may even leave at, let's say, 11:57 p.m. rather than waiting until after midnight on a Friday to begin their journey because they do not want to mess with the superstitions.
Are there any concrete examples of Friday the 13th actually being unlucky?
Well, we might remember where we all were on March 13th, 2020. Because that is the day that lockdown began. And so that was a Friday the 13th. And we could argue that that was, a very unlucky day for all of us. There are, I think, more cultural reminders that 13th is unlucky. We've got the 1980s slasher series of films, Friday the 13th. We have hotels and other large buildings feeding into this by avoiding having a 13th floor. So I think it's so embedded in culture, it would be difficult to say which came first, the unluckiness of the number or that we give reverence to the bad luck.
Well, and that gets to my final question, really. How do we see this living on today? Do we see the fear of the 13 in not having a 13th floor, in avoiding 13s of any kind?
I think it's so embedded in our culture, we probably won't get away from it. I kind of like to think about how maybe the spookiest of all Americans that are living today, Stephen King, claims to have this fear of the number 13. And if a noted horror master who can create some of the worst things that we can imagine is afraid of this number, perhaps there's credence.
All right. Well, my mom will be happy to hear about that. She is not a fan of 13. Anna, as always, thank you for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anna Lardnoy is the founder of Gothic Milwaukee and the author of several books about ghost stories in Milwaukee. That conversation with Lake Effect's Joy Powers was recorded in 2022. That's Lake Effect for today. I'm Excurrent Nunez. Audrey Nowakowski, Joy Powers, and Sam Woods join me in producing Lake Effect each week, with help from Graham Thomas. Becky Mortensen is our executive producer, and Emily Files helps edit the show. We also heard from Taryn Powell, Mayan Silver, Jimmy Gutierrez, Catherine Kokel, and Eddie Morales from the WUWM news team this week. Jason Reevy is our studio engineer, Valeria Navarro Villegas is our digital operations manager, and Trapper Shep wrote our theme music. And if you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. And of course, if you'd like to take the show on the go, you can always download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Join us again on Monday at noon when we'll meet Betty Brand's artist in residence. Until then, thanks so much for joining us today on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.